Hello, hello. Welcome to the Elevated Frequency Podcast. My name is Shannon Morse, and I'm here with my lovely co-host and business wife, Lisa Kirby. And we have a very special guest today, the one and only Abigail Wald, the founder of Mother Flippin' Awesome, which, by the way, I love that name. And what I love about Abigail is that she has taken upon the kind of ridiculously difficult job of supporting parents to support their children. And what a very cool framework that is, because I mean, I just look at my parents now and go, I wish that they had someone like you who was helping them to raise me, because most parents go in and they're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. There's books that I can read, but to have like an actual community of support is kind of another level. So I just want to say, thank you and welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, so we're very excited about this conversation because I had the joy of working with Abigail as a client earlier this year. And as I've learned more about Abigail and what she does within her community with children and teens, because this is a new program for you guys now, and then with supporting parents, it's really this beautiful access point that we have to have this conversation together of how does, like, from what you've understood with going through our process, how has it kind of supported or changed the way in which you're now able to speak to parents about a different avenue that they can support their kids with?
That's a great question. So I would say that something that I think is really important, especially during the teen years, because our kids are super done listening to us. They're like, you've already talked at me for all these years. I know everything that's going to come out of your mouth, and you can stop now. And so they're basically done, not in a bad way. It's like genuinely they're interested in the rest of the world. They're like, I want to hear what the rest of the world wants to say about this. Like, I'm more interested in what YouTube has to say about this than you at this point, because I already know what you think. And that doesn't mean that we're done influencing and parenting our kids. And one of the biggest ways that we can influence our kids at this time is modeling, walking the walk, right? So they're watching you. And it's really interesting. This is like, you can't be like, don't be on your phone, and then you're on your phone. You can't be like, take care of yourself, and meanwhile you're running yourself ragged. If you want them, they're fully watching you. They're like, wait, this is the part where I get to be an adult like you. So whatever you do, that's that adult stuff. That's what I'm doing. And so it's really important that, you are taking care of yourself and also holding boundaries, because the reality is these are the years where you've put so much into parenthood. And now the kids are kind of, they're doing what we want them to do, which is they're starting to fly out of the nest. And yet that's also kind of emotionally hard on us sometimes. And so one of the best things you can do for them and for you is, instead of trying to hold on, is to ground yourself down and take care of you. And so I think that's a really big piece of what I've learned, which kind of I think knew, like I felt that call of like that open space. And I was like, that open space that was like held by them that is now vacating a little bit. And you're like, what do I do with that space? And it was like, oh, me, So I think that is something that I've really been able to carry in my heart as like a very important piece of these years.
I so appreciate that. And I think, thank you for sharing it in that way, because that really speaks to how we can just be in life in general. Is like, if we can come from a space of, we were talking about this in our group this morning, a space of taking care of ourselves to such an extent where we become our own compass. And so with modeling that with self-care as a parent, and then allowing our kids to be able to see that in real time without being told, but we're seeing it modeled, I think that's incredible, Abigail. And I don't have children. I'm just a child of parents. So I can just reflect back on, that experience of what they modeled for me. And most of the things that you're speaking into that I learned, they didn't tell me, I saw them doing it in action, right? So that's awesome. And I'm sure Lise has her own insights as a parent of two young boys that she can share here too. So
Yeah, I'm thinking of my now 12-year-old, and I have a 12-year-old and 7-year-old, and I can already feel, it's that shift when you come out of the first 5 and you're kind of like, oh, I can breathe, coming out of that very demanding part of parenting. And now you're kind of like looking at the fruits of your more intensive labor, if you will, from the early years. And I think it's such a pivotal moment to come out of that time, taking care of yourself as best you can, but then, like you're saying, Abigail, like a return to self. And you get that space back a little bit where you can start to take care of yourself more. And we as a family have really focused on, I think the term self-care gets thrown around and it feels so isolating. And something that we practice as a family unit is like, well, we can all take care of ourselves, but we can do it together. Like we can integrate it so it doesn't feel so like mommy's got to have special 45-minute alone time to do this. I mean, yes, we all need alone time. That's definitely a thing. But like, it doesn't have to be like, I need all these times and spaces by myself to do XYZ. It's kind of like, oh, family walk after dinner. It's good for all of us. It's like walking the dog. It's like the kids need a little bit of time outside, burn off that extra energy. Then we all like settle into routine. Abigail, I'd love to hear more about like, can you share more about Mother Flipping Awesome and just kind of the programs that you're supporting parents and families with, and what you see, if at all, does the conversation ever allude to areas where they might need more support around nutrition and just like balance with nutrition, movement, and nature and that kind of stuff?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a huge topic. So what I do is I help create community and help parents make meaning out of the mess of parenthood. We work with moms and dads, although our community is largely moms. And, I think some of the things that are really hard, it's like when you first bring a child into the world or into your home, into your family, right? There's this moment where I call it like the portal opens, and it's like that liminality between life and death. You have this sense of that magic, right? Of like, this is really meaningful. This is really special. It's like you're touching that edge, of the universe. And you're like, I can't believe this is happening. And very quickly that gets subsumed by all of the constant demands, right? Of I need to change socks. I need to change diapers. Like somebody's crying, somebody this, remember like the poor UPS man came to our door once, like after I'd gotten my son napping, and I was like, what are you doing here? And I was like, dropping off a package. And I was like, that seems so excessive. You just go crazy. Trying to control all of the little details of the binky and the boppy and all of it. And very soon you've completely removed yourself from the magic. And then you feel full of stress and full of urgency and very little importance. And so your life is like running after problem after problem after problem, trying to contain things. And that winds up making you feel exhausted and resentful and depleted. And what we do at MFA is we help you hold the majesty and the magic, but also the mundane. So that actually what you can do is use that sort of chop wood, carry water mentality to actually touch the magic. So, actually, in how I change the diaper, in how I organize the play dates, in how I do all of this, I'm holding on to my deepest values, and I'm deeply serving the people I love. And I'm also making sure that these years matter for my life, because as much as these are my years of service, they're also about me. These are my middle years of my life. And I think when we give too much, or we give too little, or we give too much and get too little, there's so many ways in which that goes off, right? And so I think what are the things that regulate us, right? Like Lisa, you were just teaching me about circadian rhythm and how important it is for me as a woman at this time in my life going through menopause, right? So, um, you know, being tied to that timing, being tied to nature, like, my kids do really well in nature. They don't necessarily seek it, but they absolutely need it. And so being able to be those guide rails and get those systems and habits in your life that organize everybody, right, to be their best self, and making sure that you're not just running on urgency, but that you're actually running on what actually matters, and like making sure you filter the values in your life and break those values down into habits, systems, behavior that happen on a constant daily basis. And a lot of that is movement and food, because those are two things we have to do every day as humans, right? But then a lot of it is also just the magic of parenthood and all of the things that happen in a day as we raise people, right?
Amazing. I'm like, yeah, to Shannon's point, like, gosh, I wish that I had you going through the early years, because you're spot on. And I think this is so applicable to really anything that you find yourself in, any endeavor, right? You can lose that kind of magic when you're going through the motions and you're doing the mundane, and you're doing, like, we experience this like with strength training and just taking care of our physical bodies. You can, if you lose yourself in the process and you let it become this repetitive thing that you kind of dread, versus, wow, this is an opportunity to find like a peace in the mundane, in the repetitiveness, and allowing for that growth and expansion. If you can find that there, it's staying present and being one with the magic of life. And it's like, instead of waiting for this outcome, like, oh, when my kids are older, and then I'll appreciate all this amazing time that I spent in service while I lost myself for 18 years. No, that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
um
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
just to talk about your work for a moment, like I think that's one of the things that was really special for me going through the process, is that I I really didn't want to exercise. Let's be clear. Like, I did not want to exercise. I mean, I hired you guys, and then I was promptly like, but y'all are not going to get me to exercise. You realize that, right? And I remember the first time that Shannon was talking about strength training or whatever. I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that class. So what other classes do you have? Like, God bless Shannon. Knew well enough to be like, okay, well, you could start with this one.
Baby steps.
Baby steps. How would you feel about this half-hour little class that has nothing to do with strength training? And I was like, fine. I was such a petulant, talk about teens. I was such a petulant teen. And I was like, whatever. And, I had to back my way into it. And the real reason I had to back my way into it is because I had so much trauma around, I had trauma around two things. I had trauma around self-care. And specifically because Lisa, you mentioned this idea of self-care is lonely. So I'll tap into this for a moment, because so I think that for myself, I had done so much self-care out of necessity. And I talk a lot about this a lot. So I'll give you guys a concept that I use in my work that I think really relates to my experience with your work, which is I talk a lot about a silent promise. So I think all of us, when we hold our first, our newborn, right? Or our child at any age that they come to us, we hold them and we have a promise in our heart of like, I'm going to pass on these things from, what I got that I really want to pass on. And I'm going to make sure not to pass on these other things that I don't want to give you, right? So the silent promise can be both like quote unquote positive or negative, or like additive or subtractive, however you want to think about that. But that silent promise, if it's written incorrectly, can be deeply dangerous, actually, because then it starts coding your brain in a code that your brain will then seek out, that if there's a mistake in the code, you get a lot of dropped letters. Okay. And so what happened was for me, I think I had done so much self-care because I had to as a child. It wasn't a choice and it didn't necessarily feel good. It felt survivalist that I was like, when I grow up, I'm never going to feel that feeling.
Mm.
And so self-care to me meant I was going backwards, not forwards
Mhm.
in like my trauma brain. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So I was like, self-care felt lonely. It felt like I had broken my promise, like I had failed, right? Because if I've actually achieved my silent promise, I won't have to take care of myself. That's fucked up. Sorry, can we say that? But it
Mhm.
is. I mean, that's not doable, and that's not a healthy code to write in my brain. And so I had to unwind all of that to be like, what is health? And I think one of the questions that Shannon asked me very early in our, she realized I was going to be a bit to wrangle. And she said, let's start with this question. She was like, how about what nourishes you? Like, don't think about what you want to eat. Don't think about what you want to exercise. Just like what nourishes you. And I was like, hmm. And so I started feeling into that, and that became this radical, like, way to unhook that other code, right? So that was really, I mean, talk about doing the deep work. Like, I'm just showing up to, like, freaking count my macros and do a HIIT class or a strength training class or a body function class. But actually she's asking me this question that's like, "You're making me rewrite my brain." Ah. And so that was exactly what I needed, right? And it wouldn't have worked for me if I was just doing a strength class that was just talking about, like, I couldn't have done the work, right? I
Mhm.
needed that additional layer,
Mhm.
just like the parents, they can find it anywhere, a book that tells them how to play with their kid or how to potty train or how to whatever. But if you're not unhooking the deep inner codes, then
Mhm.
knowing the manual is useless. I already
Mm.
know the manual. The manual is just making me feel bad,
Yep.
right? Which is what I felt with exercise. Like, I know what I'm supposed to be doing. Stop telling me to do it,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
I can't.
Yes.
So that was the work that we did together that
Mhm.
healed that piece of self-care,
Mm.
right? And that's the work that you guys did with me. And then the other piece that Green Door allowed me to do was to heal, like, actual, like, freaking PE trauma of, like,
Mhm.
dodgeball and Red Rover from my childhood that made me also.
Mhm.
So I had another thing, which was, and this is again something I talk about in my work in parenting, but the idea of identity. What's your identity? Because you're always going to wake up and we all have a set point of our identity. And so my identity was like, I'm the girl who gets out of gym class and sits on the bleachers reading, like, a radio play. Do you know what I mean? Or, like,
Mhm.
reading some cool, like, essay by somebody. And like, that was who I was because gym was not a safe space for me, right?
Mhm.
And so I identified as someone who didn't do that. That was literally unsafe. And so the idea of, like, now imagine, so I've always said, like, exercise class is really annoying because you're basically preaching to people who already want to do it. And somebody needs to create an exercise program for people who really don't want to exercise because that's who actually needs it. Right.
Amen. Mhm.
Right. And so
Mhm.
the thing is, like, really what happened was, imagine you wake up one day and you realize the thing I'm worst at, the thing I hate more than anything, the thing that I don't ever want to be, the thing I don't identify with, the thing that feels profoundly unsafe is the one thing that I absolutely need to excel at for the next 30 years of my life to stay alive. And that was the precipice that I found myself on when I called you.
It's Abigail. It's so good.
Oh.
I mean, it's so good in the sense of, like, thank you for speaking into it, because what you're speaking into is going to resonate with so many individuals. And this is amazing. It's perfect timing because this is literally what we were talking about in our group this morning, which is week 8 of our programming, which is family and cultural influences.
Yeah.
And being able to be at that state within ourselves to realize that we have adopted an identity or a belief that was based on something that occurred for us in one period of time. and it's embedded itself in our coding, as you say. And now we have the opportunity to write new code, but we first have to acknowledge that there's a code that served us for a certain period of time and doesn't serve us anymore.
Yeah.
And so what's really beautiful and what's cool about that nourishment question, and I remember that conversation, is that nourishment isn't only one thing. Nourishment can be sound, nourishment can be light, nourishment can be social connection, nourishment can be shopping, nourishment can be video games. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's what's nourishing to you. And I think that's one thing that I actually got from my mom, and I'm really, really grateful. There was a couple times where I liked to be sick a lot when I was in first and second grade because I didn't want to be at school. So I would be sick. Be like, I'm sick, somebody pick me up, like we figured out a hack for this. Like, Adam is a very young individual. and I remember
actually pretended to have epilepsy
oh my God.
one day to get out of a test. I fainted, and then I got taken somewhere where they diagnosed me with epilepsy. And
Oh,
Wow.
yeah, and I actually went with it.
wow.
What? Abigail.
I don't know why, but I feel like I can relate to you so much more right now.
Acting skills on point.
God forbid, but like seriously, I was like, that's how determined I was to get out. I get it.
But I mean, at that point, like, did you really know like the extent of what epilepsy could mean?
No,
for your
I had
life?
no idea what it meant. It just meant I got out of class, and I was like,
Exactly.
okay, we're good.
Yeah.
I got this. Yeah.
Totally.
But it started to become clear, and I was like, I think I'm good now. I think I've spontaneously gone into remission. We're good.
Yeah, you're like, it was a misidentification.
Yeah.
Well, so this experience, and now I do this for myself, and maybe this could be helpful for like parents and things like that. But I remember the day where I walked into the kitchen, homesick from school. My mom was like, "What is your body asking for?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm not really sure. Let me ask." And I was like, "Avocado." And I actually did feel ill that day. Like I wasn't feeling great. And I remember she made me a bowl of guacamole and I felt immediately better. Like that was the visceral memory in my body. And so from there, that's been like part of our influence within the Green Door is like your body is so wise, and we just haven't been taught to deeply listen. And when we are still operating with the old programming, especially when it's unconscious in certain ways, and that it's hooked in a certain way. And I love the way that you say it's hooked in, because it really does feel like an energetic hook that's kind of just pulling us around in different directions without us guiding it. We're being guided by it in those instances. And so when we are able to unhook from that, it allows infinite possibility for the new identity we want to step into. And it's just acknowledging that, oh shit, there was a hook there. Unhook. Now what? Now we get to write a new script based on who we want to be and who the future version is going to be. But I just want to also like reflect back to you. That's an incredible pivotal thing to go, this thing caused me pain. It wasn't safe for the first however many years of my life, decades. And then in order for me to thrive, not even to survive, but to thrive in the next period of my life, I have to basically transform my relationship with that completely. And like the mess is the message in a way. You guys ever heard of that? Or a good friend like Odysseus says that quite a lot. And it's like, it's the same thing. It's like whatever is like the most difficult thing for us, when we're able to transform that and alchemize, it's where we have the biggest breakthroughs and transformations.
Yeah.
So it's been very cool to watch your transformation.
Yeah. I mean, I like just this week alone, like on just some very, again, just on some very mundane levels, like I woke up and I had left a message for Lisa because I was like, I'm waking up today and I don't want to work out, but I know I'm going to work out because I have gone to class on days I didn't want to work out. And in the past me would be like, I'm tired. I don't feel like this today. And I just don't have it. It's not a good day to work out. And instead now I'm like, oh, I understand that I'm tired. And that's because now I understand that means I have to work out because I'm going to feel less tired after this. And just like recoding that in my brain, or like, I woke up the other day and I was like, oh God, I've got to work out. I missed yesterday. Have to do it today. And I was like, I could hear that like should voice. And I was like, oh, I don't like that voice. And then I was like, how am I going to solve this? And I had this moment, this was yesterday before you hit me with the Bulgarian squats. And I was like, oh, Shannon's teaching today at 8. And I was like, thank the Lord. And I just had this moment where I was like, I don't have to solve this. They've solved it for me, by Jiminy. And I was like so happy. I was like, I could just open my Zoom. And I showed up, and then you were like, we're doing Bulgarian squats. And I was like, I was still happy I did it. So yeah.
I do remember that face. I was like,
I think I had the same experience this week. I was like, in my luteal phase leading up to my period, I was like, I don't want to work out. And then I'm like, wait, I don't have to teach. I just have to open my laptop. And it's like, once you show up, that's the hardest part, is just showing up. And then I always give myself the 10-minute rule. 10 minutes, body's like really just like, you want to listen to that. And it's finding that difference between resistance and like your body actually being fatigued and calling for more rest. But I love that you've identified, Abigail, that oftentimes when we feel fatigued and lethargic, it could also be from a lack of movement, which is wild. My mom actually, she's almost 70. I'm like 5-6 years behind. I'm like, wait, what? You're almost 70? And she trains with us now like 3 days a week. And the first thing she noticed when she started coming regularly, she's like, I cannot believe how much energy I have from getting more strength training in regularly. And I'm like, isn't that weird? It's kind of a paradox. Like when you're so tired, you don't have the motivation to move, but just moving and like walking and strength training and building that muscle mass is like essential for energy. Like it just, so it's so beautiful to have watched that evolve for you, Abigail. And are you finding that, are you bringing any of that up, or are you hearing any of that with your like containers of either parents or teens or younger kids, struggling with like food or movement? Like, because I know for Shannon and I, she probably more radical than me, but just like a lot of kids I feel like are really struggling being in a classroom and trying to sit down all day, and they're like supposed to sit their little butts in these chairs when really like their DNA wants to be outside running around.
So actually, I feel so strongly about this that my older son actually now goes to a school that has farming as a requirement, and he's outdoors almost all day long, and he is off screens for a good portion of the day, and there's no phones, and it's just the most remarkable place on earth. And I feel and he has started this year working out, and so he literally was like, I don't know, maybe like 100 and something pounds at the beginning of the year. He's put on like 25 pounds of muscle this year alone. And he's just working out like crazy all the time. And and so now we follow each other on MyFitnessPal. And it's pretty funny. And now my younger son is training me because he's started training also, because I went to go pick up weights. Here's an example of the modeling, right? So I started, but I didn't tell my older son. My older son wound up finding it on his own as well. But because of this big change we had made, right? I don't know that he would have found it if he had stayed in his current school. And then because screens were away, actually it was like, well, all the guys just sort of started to converge in the gym, and that was like what they do at the end of the day instead of playing video games. And so that became their thing. And then my younger son, I took him with me to go buy weights because Shannon was like, maybe you should do more than 5 pounds. And I was like, do you mean 6? And so I went to go get some 10 and 15 pound weights. And then I went, I was like, I'll just bring the kid. That'd be good. So I brought him, and then he was there, and then the guy's like selling me the weights, and he's like, what are you doing? And my son's like, nothing. he's like, what do you mean you're doing nothing? And my son was like, what do you mean? And he's like, you should be doing 50 pull-ups, 50 push-ups, and 50 something else, squats every day. And my son was like, I don't know. And then the guy was like, I'll see you in 6 weeks. Let me know how you do. I'll give you a new program. And my son was like, okay. And he like went home and just did it. And I don't know. And he's just stuck with it every single day. Like that was it. And I was like, wow. I tell him things 40 times. It's like that. It's like, he never has a second cup of coffee at home. So but that's that thing of like teenagers do so well getting taught out in the world, not by you. You know what I mean? So yeah, it was brilliant. And then he's like completely doing it, and he does it all the time. And now, both my kids will be like texting me, and I'll be like, I did strength training today, and they're like, well, what'd you do? And they're like, blah, blah, blah. And if I say like, oh, well, I worked this or that, and he's like, no, you got to split. What are you doing? They're like telling me all this stuff. I'm like, I'm good.
I started this.
So now it's like very competitive, but like in a fun way, So.
I love this aspect of modeling. Oh my gosh. And what's like that makes me think about all of the parents that we have doing our live Zoom training with their kids that work out with them, like little ones.
Great.
Like sitting on their lap or like on their shoulders, or they're bench pressing kids and animals sometimes. It's like, but that's such a beautiful kind of like full circle for this conversation, because we're going to have to wrap up because we got things to do and people to see. Is that just the modeling that you're doing, Abigail, within your communities, and then that's sharing that with the parents, and the parents get to share it with their teens. And so at the end of the day, it really starts with us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does. It's really helpful. I think also, I just think it's grounding to know that you're taking care of yourself. And there are times in parenthood, I just want to say, where, you're not going to be able to do it. Like, I just think there are real times where, but I think one thing you can ask yourself along the lines of, like, if you're a parent listening to this, along the lines of Shannon asking me, like, what nourishes you, is like, what nourishes you? And are you really truly unable, or are there other stories that are getting wrapped up in this, because I think it's so easy in the urgency of the demands to keep sweeping under the rug every day what's important. And the reality is that when you start really living what's important, both in parenthood and in yourself and in your own health, the other stuff actually magically organizes. That's the thing. I guess that's the thing I'd like to say last, is that if you focus on constantly putting out the little fires of urgency, those will never go. Like, I tell parents, are like, I just want to finish this potty problem, or I just want to finish this screen issue that we're having, or I just need to solve this sibling rivalry. I always look at them and I go, no, you don't. Where do you think you're going after that? And they're like, what do you mean? Like, aren't you going to help me solve this? And I'm like, sure, we're going to solve that, but then you're going to have another problem. Like we're going to solve all of the problems by stop chasing the problem, because the problem is a whack-a-mole. Okay. It doesn't matter. Like, and if you hit your bench press this day, then you're going to move that line. Like there's no problem in life if you can just chase and solve and it's done. Like, it just doesn't work. Do you know? That's not how we do things, because our brains are constantly wanting to expand, so you get your one job and then all of a sudden you want to do something else, or you want to get a promotion, or you whatever, decorate one room, suddenly like, oh, now the couch looks like shit. It's like you're constantly doing that. And so we have to realize that about our lives, that it's all a lie. It's all a lie. Okay. Like the sibling problem, the potty problem, the whatever extra flab, it's all just an invitation to the actual real story. And if you start actually doing the real story, all that other noise goes away. And if you chase the noise, you never catch the noise and you miss the real story. Right. So that's the mind flip, That's the thing.
100%. I love leaving it with that. It's something for individuals who are listening to percolate on, because it's so true. It's getting to that story. Like being able to get there is the magic.
That's what community and mentorship helps with, because you can't do that on your own. You have to have people watch you over time and call you out on your stories. That's the secret.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, because we can't see the back of our head.
Yeah.
That's usually where our story is happening.
Our blind spot. And then I feel like at that point, when you start to become aware, and maybe it's like multiple stories, then all those things, the challenges, instead of looking at it like, if I just solve this, then I'll be happy. If I just fix that, then life will be perfect. And instead it's like, no, that is the beauty, the ebb and the flow of life in anything, in parenting, in a health or fitness goal. It's always going to be like this. And then it's riding those waves, and you start to look at things different of like, oh, this is a challenge. It's an opportunity. I know I'm going to expand. I'm going to come out the other side. And then, like you're saying, Abigail, there's going to be another one.
Yeah.
And like, that is life. That really is life.
Exactly. That's the thing I keep trying to explain to parents is like, we invited them into life. So why are we trying to stop life from happening? Like, this is life. This is what we're doing. This is life. We're lifing together. And it's messy, but it can have meaning. And that's the meaning is what holds it all together. Right. You know? So yeah. Anyway, thank you. I have to thank you both for this incredible journey that you have taken me on. And I really appreciate. And yes. And you know, if those of you who are listening to podcasts, like podcasts, you can check out Mother Flipping Awesome podcast as well. Add that to your Green Door list after you listen to Green Door. And then, yeah, and that's it. And thank you.
And where can people find you otherwise?
Motherflippingawesome.com. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Abigail and Lisa. And for everyone who has listened, we hope you enjoyed this, kind of diving into more of our parent segment. We hope to have more of this to come, and also speaking more into just like the nature of supporting teens and our children in kind of stepping into their own inner awareness and how to cultivate that more deeply as well. So we'll have some discussions on that coming up as well. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Abigail. We'll see you next time.
Bye.